Today's lesson is going to be on ratios and proportions. And that's basically what our whole chapter is going to be about, is how to solve proportions. So let's start with a couple definitions. First, what is a ratio? A ratio is a comparison of two numbers. And we have a few different ways of writing them. We can write that as 3:4, or 3/4, or 3:4. And we'll generally sort of read this, even 3:4, we read as 3:4, a ratio of 3:4. It's a way of comparing two numbers, right? If we were talking about how many people like vanilla ice cream and how many people like chocolate ice cream, we might say 3 out of 4, right? 3 people like vanilla and 4 people like chocolate. Again, so it's just a way of comparing two different numbers. Proportions, which is what we're really going to be focused on, are a way to express an equality between two ratios. Just write that definition down for now, and I'm going to show you in a moment what that actually means. I'll give you an example. So, what I've drawn up here on the board, 2/4 equals 3/6, would be an example of a proportion. Right? This would be an example. We've got a ratio over here, and we've got a ratio over here. We don't know what these numbers are actually expressing, but we see it's very clearly a proportion here, or a ratio over here, and a ratio over here. We put an equal sign in the middle, so it's a proportion. So this is what a proportion would look like. But what we're going to be doing in this first lesson is figuring out if things are actually proportions, right? We'll take two ratios, 2/4 and 3/6, and ask ourselves, are these two ratios equal? Now, in the past, to solve a problem like this, what you probably would have done is said, well, what can I multiply the denominator by to get this new denominator? And if I multiply the numerator by the same thing, can I get the new numerator? And that still works, but in this problem, it's not really clear, right? 4 times what will give you 6? I mean, there is an answer to that question, but it's probably not really obvious to you right away. Same thing with 2 to 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a system called cross-multiplying. Cross-multiplying. And you'll see why it got that name pretty quickly. What we're going to do is we're going to multiply diagonally. 2 times 6 and 4 times 3. And if those two values are equal to each other, then we know that it is actually a proportion, right? That the two ratios are equal. So 2 times 6 and 4 times 3. 2 times 6 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. Bam, look at that. Those two are equal. That means this is in fact a proportion, right? 2/4 is actually equal to 3/6. In this problem, again, we're going to try to determine if this is in fact a proportion. We've got a ratio of 4/5 and a ratio of 6/8, or 4 to 5 and a ratio of 6 to 8. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply again, see if it works. 5 times 6 and 4 times 8. And again, it doesn't matter which one you put on which side, it'll work out the same way either way. Right? 4 times 8 and 5 times 6. 4 times 8 is 32. 5 times 6 is 30. Those two are not equal. Not equal. That means this is not actually a proportion. 4/5, 4 to 5 is not equal to 6 to 8. 4/5 is not equal to 6/8. So this is not a proportion. Make sense? Cool. Now we're going to make it a little bit harder. Now we're going to make it just a bit harder for you, because we're going to introduce a little bit of algebra to our problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you that these two ratios, 4 to 5 and n to 20, right? N is our variable standing in for something we don't know, are a proportion, right? I'm going to tell you that they're equal. I'm going to let you know from the beginning that these two are equal. And now I'm going to ask you to figure out what n must be. Again, we're going to use cross-multiplying to solve these problems. 4 times 20, and 5 times n. So over here we have 4 times 20, and over here we have 5 times n, which we write as 5n. Right? Remember, when you have a whole number, when you have a number times a variable, you don't need to put a symbol in between them. You can actually just write the number and then the variable. So 5n, or 5 n's, is equal to 4 times 20. So over here, 4 times 20 gives us 80. 80 equals 5 times something. 5 times something gives us 80. Now, if you're really good with your multiplication facts, and I hope you are, then you can probably figure out pretty quickly what 5 times what is equal to 80. But if you're not, if you don't have them perfectly up that high, then what you can do, how you can get around this little problem, what we want to do is we want to get that n all by itself. So we want to get rid of that 5. And the way we're going to do that, we're going to divide both sides by 5. Because 5 times 5 will give us 1, right? We'll be left with 1 times n, or just n, right? Because 1 times anything is itself. So the 5's will just cross right out. And what we'll have over here is 80 divided by 5. And if we solve 80 divided by 5, we get an answer of 16. So 5 times 16 gave us 80. 16 equals our unknown, our variable, our n was 16. And if you wanted to check this, you could do it just by putting the 16 back into the problem, right? Replacing the n with a 16, and cross multiplying again. Now you have 4 times 20, which we know gives us 80, and 5 times 16 on the other side. 5 times 16, sure enough, is 80. So 80 equals 80. Our work has proven itself to be correct. Okay, now let's try this one. 3 to 4, ratio of 3 to 4, is equal to a ratio of n to 12. We know that they're equal. I've already given you the equal sign. We're just trying to figure out what that n might be. Again, we're going to cross multiply. 3 times 12 gives us an answer of, let's just write that out, over here and over here. We've got 4 times n, or just 4n. 3 times 12 gives us an answer of 36. Again, we want to get that n by itself. So the way we're going to get rid of this 4 that's next to it is we're going to divide both sides by 4. The 4's cross right out. And over here now we've got 36 divided by 4. 36 divided by 4, I hope we all know by now, is a 9. N equals 9. If we wanted to check our work, again, we put a 9 in here and replace the n. 3 times 12 is 36. 4 times 9 is 36. 36 equals 36. Our work is good. Our work is right. Our answer is correct. N equals 9, or 9 equals